Welcome to Save the High Street Waltham Forest and our latest webinar, Delivering Sustainability While Growing Your High Street Business. Interesting to see whether both of those things are compatible. We'll find out, I hope. I'm Michael Whedon, and I head the High Street Advisory Board for Save the High Street. This is one of 20 webinars as part of a 10-week program within Waltham Forest designed to support high street businesses as high streets reopen, recover, and reimagine their roles for the post-COVID future. I'm going to make a few introductory points before asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves, tell them who they are, tell us who they are, where they're from, and a little bit about their interests. If attendees have questions, which they would like me to put to the panelists, could you put them into the chat box? You'll find a little icon for the chat box if you're not used to Zoom at the bottom and middle of the screen. And you can type in questions if you bring up the little dialogue there. It's interesting, I think, before COVID, can anyone remember before sort of March time? Sustainability and all sorts of issues around it were at the top of the agenda. They certainly were for Waltham Forest. It declared, a year before the lockdown, it declared a climate emergency. And then the coronavirus crisis swamped all the headlines. But we can't forget it, because sustainability, it can apply to everything that we do, everything in life. Transport, including cycling and electric vehicles and their charging stations, air quality, energy supplies, recycling, sustainable and fair trade sourcing, food security, sustainable social constructs, zero and low plastics, e-commerce and its impact and relationship to high streets, business sustainability, because we all still have to make livings and we have to look forward with that. And core to what we're talking about today, sustainable high streets and the sustainable finances of what goes into high streets. One of the things I often ask, I'm on the government's high streets task force. We talk about how future high streets are going to be and how different they will be. And one of the questions I am asking is, has anyone modelled what the economics of these things are going to look like? I'm still waiting for the answer, and I'm desperately interested to see how that works out. So the subject it's enormous. We can only touch on a few parts of this today, but we can return to look at other parts because we have 16 more webinars to go. So we could organize yet another one. Our panelists today have very different interests and very different backgrounds. So that might mean that, some of the subjects are quite specialist. That's fine. It's a huge subject. Let's get into what we can. So I'd like to introduce them one by one. I will call them by name, if that's all right. And I think I would like to start with, I'm just going to go down in alphabetical order. Ashley, could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, hi, I'm Ashley, and I run the Sunday market in Waltham. So every Sunday, Walthamstow Sunday Social, 10 till 4. Sorry, it's a bit of disturbance. I'm in my office. Yeah, and I've been doing it for the last couple of years, and yeah, it's been good seeing all the traders and how things have changed. Yeah, sorry, I probably got a bit lost there. What was the question?
Who are you?
Just
what are you doing?
myself.
Why are you here today? Yeah.
Yeah.
I take it you're a big advocate for markets then.
Yeah, and also, local high streets as well. Got to get businesses back. I suppose I'm to advise people, because I feel people, everyone can talk about just pumping money in things, but I feel there is certain things businesses can do to, change their business in the current climate to, get back to, making a good living and stuff. And same for the traders.
Okay, well, I'm sure there will be a lot that we can ask you about how that can best be done. Kirsten, can I ask you to step up?
Hi, so I'm Kirsten. I currently run with my husband the Wild Goose Bakery in Leytonstone. We're a social enterprise bakery, which we set up 6 years ago. Essentially, it sounds laughable now, but we did it as a pop-up. We did it as a career break. Essentially, we only signed a lease for a year. We told our jobs we were leaving. We had a lot of, family stuff, and we just needed to clear our brain for a year. And 6 years later, we're still doing it. And we love high streets. We love the community, and it's just a really lovely thing. But before that, my husband and I were both head chefs in the city. We worked in restaurants. We worked in quite high-end restaurants. And my husband worked over at the Dorchester and Brown's Hotel. We did a lot of things like celebrity weddings and all that kind of stuff. And it was just high stress. And we just needed a little bit of a break. But the reason why we set up one of our social enterprise impacts is that we set it up in 2014 as an eco-sustainable business. And it was essentially on the back of the amount of waste that we saw in our previous careers. Where restaurants will say, we make everything fresh every day. And that sounds great to customers. But the reality of that is that means if it's, say, an Italian restaurant and they make an entire sheet of lasagna, hoping to sell 30 portions, they're saying to customers, we make it fresh every day, and they sell 2 portions. That means that whole tray is going in the bin, and a new tray is made the following day. And that's, the amount of waste is just horrific. And a lot of the times restaurants go out of business because their food costs are too high. And we decided that we are ploughing our life savings into this business. We don't want to go out of business because we're spending too much money. And so we started on that, and then we decided we'd be a plastic-free business. We did a lot of refill and all this kind of stuff, and it's kind of just snowballed from there, really.
Snowballing from there, pretty good. Okay, thank you for that. Paul, could I bring you in, please? Tell us about you and Zed.
Yes, so I'm Paul Gasson. I live in Walthamstow, been a resident here for over 15 years, and I work for Zed Waltham Forest as a delivery, as a courier, riding bikes most of the time. And Zed is as a zero emission delivery company. We largely use cargo bikes for all our deliveries. We deliver all around Waltham Forest and beyond. But we focus mainly on E17, E10 and E11. We're starting to roll out a same-day delivery service for local businesses. And I want to say I love working for Zed. It's a really ethical company. We are helping to solve the climate crisis. We're keeping air pollution down. We're doing all sorts of stuff, which is good. And I think what's lovely is our team are really motivated. They're local people. They know the area well. I hate internet shopping. I avoid it at all costs. I always shop local. And for me, trying to keep the high street going, really, getting local businesses back up and running properly, I'm really passionate about that. So really looking forward to today's event.
Nothing better to start with a bit of passion on a subject like this. That's tremendous. Rachel also has a bit of passion about some of these subjects too. Can I hand over to you, please?
You can, yes. So I'm not a high street business. I'm a startup. I run a company called Our Pledge. And like you, Michael, actually, I've always been really interested in the economic sustainability as well as the environmental sustainability of business, partly because I have been a passionate environmentalist all my adult life and before that. And I was doing as much as I possibly could in as many situations as I could for the environment. And most of my friends and colleagues and family weren't doing anything. And I realized that part of that was that they enjoyed their routines, they enjoyed shopping, and that was something that they kind of understood and didn't really want to change. And so I started looking at, well, okay, how do we bring sustainability to customers? How do we stitch that into these commercial transactions that, you know, people are going to carry on shopping? Well, let's get them to buy in and invest into sustainability. So our pledge is basically it's a kind of a crowdfunding model, but I call it a pledge to buy, pledge to supply model, where businesses, high street businesses, can ask their customers, you know, well, if we pledge to supply this, will you pledge to buy it? And by meeting in the middle, they are sort of creating a pattern possible. So can you hear me okay? I'm not flashing again, am I? Like my
you went a bit wobbly there, but do carry on.
Okay, I don't know how much you missed, but yeah, so it's this kind of collaboration between businesses, high street businesses and their customers around new sustainable options. So many of you have met Adrienne, who we worked with previously, who was looking at stocking a refill station. She asked her customers, if we stock this, will you buy it? And they prepaid for those refill options. I'm going to turn my video off in case that's interfering. And now we're actually looking at supporting, we have a new campaign starting today, completely out of London even, in Cardiff. We're running a campaign for a vegan restaurant that has not been able to seat as many customers because of COVID. And again, I think coming out of COVID, we have to really think about these sustainable business models. How do businesses survive? Vegan restaurant used to be able to seat 70 people. Now they can only seat 28, I think. So they have less income and unused space. So they are asking their customers, well, what if we open a vegan shop, basically a retail space within the restaurant? If we stock vegan products and refills, will you pledge to buy them? So it's about that conversation, opening up that conversation so that we're always minimizing risk for the business and bringing the customer in as an investor. So that's our pledge.
Sounds good. Excellent. Thank you.
Right.
Can I turn to products now? I'm going to come first to Kirsten, then actually to Ashley. Kirsten, part of what you do involves sourcing ingredients and so forth. You're a center point really in quite a complicated supply chain, which you need to fully understand and work with consistently and deliver consistent products. Can you tell us a bit about how very easy that is, or how complicated and challenging that is, and what you're trying to do with it, please?
So essentially, we came into it quite lucky, I think, in that we'd worked for some pretty nice places that use some very nice things. And so we already had a relationship with mills and farms like Hodmedods, Shipton Mill, and those kind of places, and La Fromage and different places. We already had an established relationship with them, and so when we opened up our place, we just phoned them up and said, hi, we're doing our own thing, would you supply us? But we try, and right from the very beginning, we wanted to have a relationship with our suppliers, because I feel that, and especially over this COVID period, that's really paid off, because we've had that relationship with our suppliers, which would have only happened by having local suppliers, as in the UK, that we could phone and talk to, as opposed to just an email internet system. We were able to phone them up the second that COVID hit and say, we suddenly need pallets and pallets and pallets of flour. Can you get them to us? And they were able to say, because it's you, we'll get it to you. And it was just that local element, that collaboration with local people, and that relationship really, really helps. It also helps with consistency of product, and because whenever there's a problem, we can talk to them directly. whenever they've got something maybe new, they'll phone us up. There's a pasta a place that a beautiful pasta manufacturer in Leytonstone actually that we're working quite heavily with, and they're developing products and dropping up samples and saying, what do you think? Do you think I should up the fava bean flour? Do you think I should reduce it? All this kind of stuff. And it's just lovely. It's just really, really nice to have that relationship, and it helps us. And it helps with costs, etc. as well because of that relationship. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I would ask you a bit about food miles and whether you prioritize suppliers who are local to you. I know you said within this country, but you know, there are mills all around. Parenthetically, by the way, you were one of the people who gave me a problem a few months ago. As a sourdough baker of many years, I suddenly found that the commercial suppliers were taking all the available flour from Shipton Mill and others, and all the new bakers who suddenly were at home and were baking as well, and I couldn't get hold of it. Yeah. And I nearly ran out. I was down to the final bag before I finally managed to get. But I found, I'm out in Leicestershire actually, I found a local windmill, which is a completely organic setup, which is able to provide this. Naturally, they were stretched. But, you know, do you develop these relationships entirely on your own with these suppliers? I know you had those existing relationships to some extent, but do you work with other local businesses for this? Because presumably there's some economies of scale or efficiencies in actually, you know, if there are, you know, if you're purchasing from around the country, getting stuff brought in on just purely on a practical basis, but maybe commercially as well, working with other producers within the borough at all?
We do. I mean, we have a lot of it, weirdly, a lot of it is done through things like Instagram and customers. So customers will come in and say, oh, my friend has started, I don't know, my friend has started a pesto business. Would you be interested in stocking them? And or my favorite cheese is X. Would you start supplying them? Or people, it's just word of mouth, really. You know, a lot of the times I just get emails. People know about us, they email us, they say, oh, would you consider stocking us? Would you consider using us? And a lot of it's just sitting in front of the internet, kind of Google searching local businesses, really. But we try and do as local as we possibly can. We definitely use less miles as we possibly can. We try desperately to avoid importing things that we can get here. But
one thing I've always been aware of, I've spent many years working in independent retail, is the creation of formal or informal buying groups. On the basis of this subject, do you think there's any, mileage for this within the borough for interested businesses to maybe get together to try and really make the most of that kind of local buy, but bulk buying to reduce transport costs and so forth?
Yeah, definitely. There was years ago, they've now gone, unfortunately, but years ago there was a couple of cafes on our high street who wanted to get some plastic-free, non-plastic straws, and they couldn't find a good price for them, and they wanted to go plastic-free, but they just couldn't take that step because of the price. And so we sat down, had a coffee, and said, why don't we buy it together? And so we bought we bought a pallet worth of straws, got them at the same price as the plastic straws because we were buying in bulk, and then we just divvied them out. And we split it. We split the invoice. It worked. You know, it was fine. That was something that we did kind of just in a friendship group. But if there was something, I don't know of anything that's established at the moment, but if there was something where we could all collectively buy together, especially non-plastic stuff, that would be something that I think would work and work really well. One of the things that last year when Leytonstone was trying to do the whole plastic-free high street thing, the council was coming in saying, would you go plastic free to all the local businesses? And one of the things that I kept hearing from people was cost. I would do it, but the cost, or I would do it, but I don't have time to go and Google search alternatives. So if the council could come in, or someone could come in and say, you know, here it is, here's an ordering sheet. Here's the price differences. If you buy from this, you know, this group, then you get to just quick switch, no problem. It would be good.
Thank you. I'm going to come actually to Paul now, then to Rachel, then to Ashley. Paul, so if, for example, we can encourage and facilitate these basically buying operations, could there be a role, you know, if you think, you know, a delivery of Shipton Mill flour arrives at Kirsten's place, but it's got to be distributed around the borough. Is there a role in that kind of B2B work as well for Zed?
What a brilliant question. Of course there is. Yes, that's absolutely exactly what we do. So yeah, that's exactly what we're here to do, really, is to try and provide affordable, sustainable, high quality, you know, great customer service, that exactly that type of thing. So yes, of course we could do that. That's really perfect for the kind of work we do. And whilst we focus on the local area, you know, Walthamstow and surrounding boroughs, we can deliver to anywhere in the UK using our partners. So we can offer, you know, complete service throughout the UK if needed.
Okay, well, keep telling us things like that, because there are things you'll know which we haven't asked you, which you might want to bring to it. I think Rachel wanted to come in on a particular point there.
Well, yeah, so just following on from what both Kirsten and Paul were saying, really, I mean, for me, our pledge, we're young and we're quite small, but the vision has been to take that pledge to buy, pledge to supply model between consumers and businesses, and between businesses and suppliers, because like Kirsten's saying, if a collection of people, business owners, are pledging to buy, then, you know, we even found that on a small scale with the mini market and already with Greens Vegan in Cardiff, that the negotiating power of having this sort of proof that there is a dedicated, an actual purchase that is going to happen, a transaction that's going to happen, makes it much easier to negotiate, bring prices down, buy in bulk. So that's absolutely what I've been working towards with our pledge as well. So I'm hoping that there might be a way we could do that as a pilot, maybe between us coming out of here.
Yes, Paul, before I come to Ashley.
Yeah, just wanted to also add that I think people who think about kind of bike delivery businesses think about small packages. Just wanted to point out, really, we can take anything up to around 200 kilos on our bikes. We can take, you know, 1,000 litres, 1,500 litre loads. We have an e-van as well, so we can do even bigger stuff. But yesterday, for example, we had 2 cargo bikes, which between them we delivered about a tonne of locally sourced organic fruit and veg. You know, we can do actually quite big stuff just using cargo bikes. We've got quite an impressive fleet. So don't think bike and think small. We can actually do pretty much anything within reason.
This is fascinating. I mean, we did a webinar last week about collaboration on the high street, and I think what we're hearing is that there is potential in this sustainability agenda for more local collaboration. One of the key things is we were also talking about local champions, the people who get out there and talk to people and network and have ideas and imagine things and bring all of this together. Maybe from this webinar series and some of these contacts, we might make some progress on that. Ashley, can I bring you in to talk about the kinds of products that your market traders are supplying and what their customers are looking for, how that's changing, and how sustainability is either key or not to that kind of area? Over to you. Tell us a bit more, particularly about your market.
Well, look, the Sunday market, you know, we're a private business, so we're very different to the everyday market, Tuesday to Saturday. And what we try and do at the Sunday market is make it look and feel a little bit different. We offer, you know, we try and offer very good quality street food from local traders, etc., start-up businesses. We have people from the everyday market come who sell, you know, the clothes, women's clothes, men's clothes, children's clothes. And what we're trying to do on the Sunday is just really just provide, you know, a variety of different products. And obviously, you know, we try and do promotions and stuff to get customers down there. I mean, I don't know if any of you have seen our Instagram or Facebook. We spend a lot of money on advertising. You know, we try and, you know, recently we're doing a campaign for anyone, NHS, police, fire brigade, up to 20% off. We've got every single trader signed up to that discount to try and get consumers down. It's been running, and also people from the council, sorry. It's been running for a couple of weeks, but, you know, I don't know if it's working or not. Yeah, I mean,
how many stall holders do you have at the moment?
We have on our list about 70, but we have weekly between 30 and 40 that turn up. Okay.
And how's that changed with the reopening and recovery from COVID? And I suppose the related lack of or resurgence in footfall for consumers?
Well, since COVID, we've been inundated with applications because there's not a lot of events like Glastonbury or, you know, big main events. You know, like the one in Walthamstow that's on every year. I can't remember what it's called. It's in Lloyd's Park. Is it Party in the Park?
Anyone answer that one? Is it Party in the Park?
Garden Party.
Garden Party, yeah. I mean, that is huge, you know, and, you know, that's not on. And also a lot of the food traders that we approach as well work for a lot of companies like Curb, who, you know, I look at Curb every day and I try and see what they do and see if I can bring it to the market. Yeah, so.
Okay.
I lost a little bit track there.
But you're getting lots of, I mean, one of the things we are seeing is, I suppose because businesses have been under pressure, or people, as they are increasingly, have lost jobs, we're seeing a resurgence in interest in people setting up new businesses. The FSB's seen it as well. Say the High Street's definitely seeing this. You know, people who might have hesitated before have had a big nudge. And they may have, for example, just lost a job or been paid off or something like that. We always actually see this in hard times. There is a big increase in people trying out new businesses. I suppose actually this is particularly relevant to market trading because it's the kind of thing you can do without entering into one of the most difficult things, a long-term lease, which Kirsten's probably got. What percent, you know, what sort of rough percentage would you say of your people at the moment are just pure startups, actually?
I reckon probably about 10-20%. But the problem is with, when I do get a startup, I try and be very honest with them and I try and guide them, because a lot of people think you can turn up to a market, you can set up your gazebo and you can stand in your stall and you're going to get customers. It's not like that anymore. You've got to have a bit of personality. You've got to be, you know, advertising yourself. You know, I'm always talking to my traders, even the ones during the week. I just can't understand why they don't use Facebook, why they don't use Instagram, why they don't change their signs, make them more presentable. And, you know, that's what I try and do on a Sunday. On a Sunday, I don't know if any of you've been, but I put up 2 massive signs saying, this is Walthamstow Sunday Social. You know, we're open 10 till 4, 2 big yellow signs. And I don't know why, you know, people are not taking advantage of these free platforms to make themselves better.
Well, I'll tell you what, come to our webinar next Tuesday and you might find out I've got a couple of national experts on this. One particularly from a company called Maybe, which is really all about the value of social media, you know, listening to it and seeing what people's opinions are, but gauging how much interest there is. And one thing they can do is particularly they can not just talk, you know, trace how an individual business is doing, such as Kirsten's, or that business against others, but also an area, or for example, an individual market. So actually it's possible to listen to what's going on and respond to it. And I quite agree. That's all free. It is very significant at the moment, I think, that looking at expenditure figures through Barclaycard, for example. Now, Barclaycard have their eyes on about 40% of all the transactions in this country, both online and offline. And they're saying very clearly, and the ONS is reporting the same thing, that actually the biggest growth in online sales, and we'll come back to Paul and his objection to that in a minute, the biggest growth in online sales has actually been by businesses which have real premises, whether it's market stalls or actual shops, rather than pure play retail.
Yeah.
And we've seen, I'm sure you've all seen it around, a lot of businesses pivoting what they do to, for example, my local pub delivers. If you order, you can just order off their normal menu and they'll bring stuff around. A lot of this is about actually reaching out and being visible where the attention of consumers is. And I've got to say, for most consumers, it's on one of these things. That's where you need to be reaching. Kirsten, have you been making use particularly of social media and so forth? What's your take on this?
We have the bit of a different things. At the beginning of lockdown, we actually got our Facebook was hacked, and we lost our Facebook. Completely lost it. I still haven't managed to get it back. So we've been relying on Instagram and Twitter, and I have definitely seen a big difference. Our reach on Facebook. I always thought that no one's looked at our Facebook, everybody looked at our Instagram, but weirdly, I think a huge chunk of people look at Facebook, which we're now missing and we're working on getting back. But we couldn't have done COVID. We didn't close at all. We just kept going the whole time. And we couldn't have done it without social media, period. And the responses we got was amazing. I've never seen anything like it, where we would put a post out saying, we have flour, we have eggs. And there was one day we got flash mobbed by, we had about an hour long line for flour. People
you're not trolling me on the flour again, are you?
I'm sorry. But it was crazy, and it was just purely because of an Instagram post. We put it out, and it got reposted into a Hackney group, and then next minute half of Hackney were coming over to get flour, and we've just found that it's things like pivoting. You were talking about pivoting. We sell so much pre-orders online now. And it's just because people have just got used to the idea of they might not get it. So they'll pre-order it and then come and collect it. And it's things like bread and cheese and milk and that kind of thing. And it's just a huge part of my business, which never was before.
Okay, I'm going to come back to Paul on that in a minute, if I may. Rachel wants to make a point about a cafe.
Oh, I think it's just the same point that Kirsten was making, really, that, COVID has seen these businesses, and you were making, about businesses becoming hybrids in a way. It's not, it's finding other ways to be sustainable. Again, the vegan, it was set up, Greens Vegan in Cardiff, set up as a restaurant, cafe bar, really looking at health and nutrition. And then because of COVID, we actually did some market research for them. That's always the kind of the first piece of the puzzle for us, is to go out and ask the customers, what do you want? And so we did a survey, and they hadn't thought of delivering frozen meals. So people were saying, too worried to cut. They're right in the middle of Cardiff, right in the central part of Cardiff. And they'd said, look, we can't open to as many people anymore. They were closed for a long time. And the market research said two things they weren't expecting. One was, could you deliver boxes of frozen meals, please? And that's brilliant for them, because it's less, they don't have to be open to do that. They've got less overheads that they're covering. And they're carrying on, they can still buy the same ingredients and make the same meals. And also, just completely without really realizing it, their customers were saying, and what about refill options? That's something we'd like to do when you're open and come back into, which they weren't thinking of, or they kind of toyed with, but not felt confident enough to do. So they can seat about 28 people. So people are still coming in, but they're serving many, many more. So they're this hybrid of being open day to day and having a high street presence as well as being a delivery. So same.
Thank you. And I quite agree. So Paul, you're not a big fan of online, as you already said, yet your sustainable zero emissions delivery service is in a perfect position to really help these small businesses connect with their customers. I think there are some limitations on what you can carry or not. Can you just expand on what it is you do carry and what you don't carry? You already told us the range you got, but tell us a bit more about that.
To give you an idea of the sort of stuff that we carry, we deliver medicines to the housebound from the pharmacies. So already mentioned, we deliver a lot of fruit and veg, particularly on Wednesdays when we work with Organically, locally grown fruit and veg. We do things like, what else do we do? We do lots of parking permits for the council. When the libraries reopen, we'll be doing delivering library books to the housebound. There's a huge variety of things that we do. In terms of, sorry, just ask the question again.
Is there any, one thing I wanted to get was, is there anything you won't carry? Apart from obviously explosives and things like that.
We don't tend to carry young children. Obviously we're kind of responsible in terms of health and safety, so no, we wouldn't be carrying explosives either. I don't think it's anything particular. We don't do things like cheap takeaway food, simply because that's a different culture. Our riders are. I suppose what I want to kind of make distinction between perhaps some of the lower end delivery services where you'll probably get a fairly sweaty individual turn up throwing stuff at you, be very rapid turnaround. I think we're slightly more considered in terms of what we do. So I don't think there are any particular limitations on what we're prepared to carry. No.
Okay. How many riders you got out there on the streets at any one point? What's your capacity?
Total capacity, I think we could have currently, we're growing quite rapidly at present, for obvious reasons, but probably, today we've only got 4 out. It's a fairly quiet day. I think biggest we've had so far is 10 or 11. Obviously our fleet is growing quite rapidly at present. We've probably increased it by 50% in the last 3 or 4 months, and we have the capacity to expand a lot more, so we're able to grow quite quickly if we need to, but we're trying to find that balance between being competitive in terms of our team and our overheads versus what the local market is like. Okay,
well, sustainable then. I want to switch this slightly now more towards some of the underpinnings of businesses on high streets. And there are 2 things in particular, but they do go together. One is premises and the other one is money. Because if you don't have money, you've certainly got, a challenge. And setting up a business does, although it varies depending on the type of business they're setting up, does involve a bit of investment to some extent. Rachel, you were talking a little bit earlier about your model for financing. Could you go into that in a bit more detail for us, just so people fully understand the range of the kinds of things that you offer?
Sure. So it's, as I said, it's a pledge to buy, pledge to supply model, but the most kind of familiar mechanism that people will know is probably like crowdfunding. You have to do an analysis before we run a campaign. We will do a kind of a risk analysis or an ROI, return on investment analysis with the business to make sure that what they are looking to raise money for is achievable for them and for their customers, and also that it's going to be sustainable. So we don't want to raise money for something that isn't then going to become an integrated part of their business offering in the future. So when we were working with the Stone Mini Market, and actually this was an innovation that Adrieni brought to the picture, but we said we're going to create a financial target. So we want to go plastic free to as far an extent as possible. That means building a refill station. What does that cost? How many pre-sales do we need to achieve in order to make that possible? But obviously, if you have an amount of money and you say £5,000 and one very benevolent philanthropist comes along and says, oh, here's your £5,000 for the refill station. There's absolutely no proof there that there's a broad audience for those products. So we also have a target of a number of pledges. So you have to generate your target through a range of customer pledging. So that's one integral part of it. As I said, we always start with market research and return on investment analysis. So you're always doing something that is, bringing the risk down. And at the moment, we are focusing on plastic free, because that's another thing that humans like, is to know that they've achieved an impact. So we can say, well, by pledging to this campaign, you brought a refill station in, or you changed a restaurant's offering, and therefore we have reduced X number of X number of plastics, and that feels good. We're always trying to make it positive. Environmentalism can feel really heavy, sustainability can feel really heavy, and so we're trying to make it feel a little bit more fun and have some real positive, immediate feedback for the pledges and for the business.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because one of the things I find a lot about high street issues is what I would call guilt tripping. That you must use it or lose it. And to my mind, it just associates in people's minds the high street and guilt. And I really think that's a bad idea. You take a much more positive view, which I'm very pleased to hear there. I want just to turn to Ashley on this. So you will have, as we've heard, 10-20% of startups. Are they all starry-eyed? I know that market trading involves a relatively low investment in premises. Obviously, they give you some money, but the rest of the business is still a business. It's just portable. Do they have access to funds? Do they have access to enough funds? Do they think it through carefully?
It's difficult, because, I talk about that some traders think it through a lot. And I go back. Let me talk about like street food. Street food is huge, and before COVID, it was probably the as far as I can see, the fastest growing market. And I always talk about a company called Curb, because what they were doing is they would teach these people every single thing about how to start their business, what to do, and everything else. And they would get to a point where they're self-sufficient, they could go on and do it. But some people come to the market. There's not a lot of cost. They make the cakes at home. They turn up and they just turn up in their stall, expect to sell. It comes down to a lot of effort as well. What they genuinely want out of it, and what they're doing on the side to grow it.
Okay. And what's the kind of lead time for working with you if somebody wants to try one of these things out, just out of interest? They have a brilliant idea. Aha, ping, got a good idea. Are you easy to contact? What's the sort of
very
setup
easy to
time
contact?
For them?
Very easy to contact. I feel that my staff, we're very helpful to people. Look, when it comes to food, you've got to have insurance and other stuff to do with food, which my staff deal with. When it comes to selling a product, I think you just need generally just the insurance. Like if you're selling clothes or, I don't know, lip balm or products and stuff like that, you just need the insurance. So, turnaround generally, if someone messages me on a Thursday, and as long as they got the paperwork, they could be trading on the Sunday.
Yeah, I think understanding the insurances and the regulations which still apply to the operations, of a market stall is something that maybe sometimes people struggle with. I was talking to somebody from enforcement the other day about this, especially with COVID, and understanding rules which seem to be changing day by day. Actually understanding that is a challenge. It's a lot to get your head around, isn't it?
Yeah, all my traders have got to have sanitizer, face mask. They've got to control the queues. We've got to control the queues. We can't have loads of people opposite and tunnels of people all next to each other. It's really really difficult, because at one point we're saying to these traders, come come, we want you to do well, but obviously we've got to have the safety of people. And, you know, it's like you can't have too many people buying their products at the same time. It's trying to get a fine line.
So can I just ask you, Kirsten, I mean, how have the current and very frequent changes challenged your sustainability? Profitability is a key issue for all businesses. In the long run, if you don't make a profit, you don't do anything. You have to just stop, don't you? So has it put a really serious crimp in it? I know you said you stayed open throughout and you've been in a sector which has been able to do that, but struggle, not struggle, sailed happily on?
Massive struggle. We haven't had a day off since March. It's been full on. My poor long-suffering husband has had to literally get his toolkit out and build shelves, break down our entire cafe and turn it into a bigger retail space. We have changed around, especially our Forest Gate location. We've had to completely rip the thing apart and rejig it about 4 times now, just to serve customers as best as we could and keep within the guidelines. So it was things like people stand there, okay, people can come back in again, 2 meters, 1 meters, all this kind of thing. And it was, you know, and then we had a huge amount of our staff all on furlough, and then they all were coming back. So with our front of house staff and our baristas, etc. And then we had to kind of think, right, okay, it's not just us, we need screens and. So it's been a huge thing. And I have to say, there was weeks when we did just break even. And that was mainly because of the sheer cost of, you know, before COVID, we could give people flour and eggs and refills and things in their own containers, but then we had to find packaging because we couldn't do that. We couldn't accept someone's nice cloth flour bag. We had to put it in a bag and give it to them. So we had to suddenly figure out that, and then we had to figure out how we're going to seal it and how we're going to do this and how we're going to do that. It's been a massive weekly pivot, but you know, that's the beauty of local independent, really.
It is. If I could just bring that back to Paul, because I want to come on to one other subject, which is premises and so forth at the moment. But Paul, I mean, how much of a crimp has it put in your activities to have to deal with the current and likely to be for some time requirements of the coronavirus crisis on the, you know, the day-to-day effects on your business and how you have to act, because you're consumer facing, aren't you?
Yes, and indeed we have to be particularly careful, for example, when we're delivering prescriptions to people with shielding. So we're quite careful in terms of hygiene, in terms of hand washing and masks and things like that. I think it was in the early days, obviously, you know, it was really concerning. I think we've very quickly got systems in place in terms of sanitizing the bikes we use, making sure that we were complying with all the right things. I think for us, it was been relatively straightforward. We don't tend to have our courier teams don't tend to all be in the same room at the same time. They're normally out and about. So I think it's been a relatively straightforward process for us. We have a reasonably large office, so there aren't major issues there. But my heart does go out to those businesses, particularly who have small premises where they're really struggling for space and potentially managing quite high customer flows. It's been challenging, interesting to watch, you know, the creativity about how they've managed these things. Can I just go back? Actually, I didn't answer a question earlier, just to give you an idea of the range of stuff that we deliver. In the last few weeks, we've delivered cakes, bottles of beer, children's clothes and toys, kites, flowers, wine, food, medication, advertising leaflets. There's really no limit within reason. We don't deal with massive fridge freezers. They probably would not, the big ones wouldn't even fit in our van, but really most stuff that we buy and sell around locally, we're well able to deliver.
Okay, so I'm going to thank you for that. I'm going to come back to Ashley. And I want to bring us back to one subject, which is long-term interests of high streets, which are places which have places within them, massively under challenge before COVID. We've currently got a third footfall. Footfall is a third lower than what it was this time last year, despite the reopening, despite Eat Out to Help Out and so forth. There is a classic route from, well, actually, it now goes from spare bedroom trader to market trader to pop-up shop where Kirsten was to some kind of license or lease on a permanent presence. It always strikes me as relevant that if you take Marks and Spencer's and Tesco's, two of the biggest retailers in the country, both of them started out as market traders. Is that actually where a lot of your people's brains are? Is that what they're thinking about? Is that a kind of roadmap they have, or do most of them intend just to be doing what they're doing and carry on doing that, do you think?
Do you mean the traders, do they intend to get premises at a later stage?
Yeah.
The food ones do, yeah. The ones that do like the smaller things, no. And what I actually tell the foodies is, start trading at 3-4 markets a week, then maybe concentrate on getting a shop and get a following. Don't just rush into a shop, spend 20 grand on a refit, and just, you've got your shop open, you expect people to come. The ones that do well when they open a shop are the ones that have a massive following on social media and are very big in the community, and they generally do well when they open a shop. So that's where they want to get to, but some of them rush into it and then they're back on the market, and some of them do take their time and really, build an audience to their product.
Okay, thank you. I mean, and it's interesting at the moment because we're expecting there to be more empty shops, which in some ways is more opportunities for that. Kirsten, you said you started off as a pop-up. How was that arranged? Was it in a premises on a license? Is it the same premises? What?
Well, funnily enough, following on with what Ashley was saying, we actually started as a market stall. We just wanted to see what, what is out there. Does anybody even want what we're making? And also it was a big learning curve for us to move from back of house, which was our comfy place in the kitchen, not being customer facing. That was our comfy place, to actually doing transactions ourselves. That was a huge learning curve. And so we started with markets. We started on Brick Lane, and we did okay with that, actually. We did quite well. It wasn't enough to pay the rent, but it was okay. And then we decided, actually, this is a lot of hard work. I have huge admiration for people who do markets, because it was just, I was up until 2 o'clock in the morning making cupcakes and all this kind of stuff, then going and getting a zip car and shoving it in a zip car, and then hauling tarpaulin and all these poles and all this kind of stuff, and then setting it up, and then standing there and waiting for people to arrive, and doing all the advertising beforehand, and sitting there doing Instagram and all this kind of stuff. It was just so much hard work. And so we said, right, okay, let's do a pop-up in an actual established place where we can actually make the stuff and then just bring it up the stairs and put it down. And it was a massive risk, but we did it on a stupid budget of about 10 grand, which, if you know anything about setting up a bakery, is absolute insanity. But we skip dived. We literally, all of our cafe furniture came out of skips. So yeah, it was fun.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, your particular interest on the finance side actually involves one example we've talked about, which is really the move from business moving from one premises to a bigger premises and enabling sustainable finance in that. Can you talk a bit about that? Because what Kirsten's been talking about and the step up from one to another really does involve stupid budgets, sensible budgets, but actually in the long run, we all know anyone who runs a business, it's got to be a sustainable budget over time. Tell us a little bit more. We're in the last 3 minutes. I'll give you a minute to talk about that. Would you mind?
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, so Stone Mini Market's moving to a new premises and we're going to run another campaign. This is probably breaking news, but we're going to run another campaign with them to do that. And that's actually come from a business customer kind of, again, conversation about whether that was really possible. It's been, I'm speaking on behalf of Adrienne actually, who I think is listening, so she can correct me if I'm wrong. But again, so we've just run another survey and gone back to the customers and said, you know, one thing I wanted to share, because to bring it back to what you said in the first place, Michael, is about sustainability and business sense, and that like green business can be good business, you know, with the right customer, the right, you know, and like Ashley was saying, the right conversations that you're having with your customers, and listening to them and making sure they know what you're doing and why you're doing it and why it's good for the customer and the planet as well as for your business, I think is really, really key. But one of the things I just wanted to say was we asked Leytonstone basically, and this isn't necessarily all mini market customers, but and then certainly not my customers necessarily, 48% of people said they would be more likely to shop at a place that was more zero waste or ethical, and 26.8% of people said they'd be much more likely to shop at a sustainable business. So that is, my maths is terrible, but about 70%, possibly more, of the customers that we surveyed, and there were 235 people who answered, who said that sustainability is attractive to them as a business proposition.
Excellent. Can you send me those statistics? They sound really useful.
Yes, I can.
Okay, this is not yet breaking news, but I mean, it's very relevant to this question of financing and so forth, because one thing I have picked up is that, and this relates to mortgage lending for businesses at the moment, but you'll see in a minute why it's very significant for the long term. We are already elsewhere seeing lenders saying that businesses which have taken any form of government support during COVID are not able to borrow from them. Now, some are taking it as a black mark on their credit worthiness. Others actually said, no, if they've taken any support, absolutely not. And this worries me, frankly, because the availability of credit is going to be vitally important as we come out of this and try and grow again. Now, the reason I picked the mortgage one is it's the first one up. But secondly, if they're going to take that attitude to asset-backed lending, what's going to happen when they start to go on to things like borrowing for new bikes, or for, you know, new bakery fittings or something like that? I think there's a huge issue coming there, and I think sustainable alternative finance is going to be a very significant story as we come out of that. I have to wrap it up now. You know, people have been saying, oh, we're all in this COVID thing together. Actually, we're all in the world together. And, you know, this sustainability issue affects us all. It's too big a subject, I know, for one relatively short event. I think we've seen the potential, among other things, for example, for collaboration by businesses on achieving sustainability, like buying groups and deliveries by Z, for example, within that kind of operation within the borough. So hopefully we will see something coming from this for that. Thank everyone for coming. I hope you found that useful. I did. I found it fascinating. Please tell others about this series, and please come back yourselves. The recording of today's webinar and the details of past and future webinars can all be found on the homepage for savethehighstreet.org//Waltham-Forest/. So all the recordings and all the forthcoming webinars, which are being announced weekly. Next Tuesday, I think I mentioned earlier, at 11 AM, we're looking at how businesses can attract and are attracting footfall to their high street premises or markets, actually, with their online activity of all types. So that includes social media, it includes e-commerce, and it includes search. And just for completion, on Thursday at 11, our panel will be discussing how high street businesses are developing new products and services for that post-COVID high street. So I suspect we're going to be looking at some of these issues again. We hope to see you then. Thank you everyone for bringing your time, your expertise and your opinions. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Nice meeting you all.
Yeah, nice to
Bye.
meet you. See you again.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you later.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.